It is finally time to work on book 2. I'm so excited because I have been wanting to work on book 2 for a while now, and I finally get the opportunity to do so. If you're new here, my name is Stephanie, and I'm writing my first book, which I call Project Lily, and I just finished writing the 4th draft of Project Lily, and so it's time to take a break. And that means it's time to work on my second book. I haven't had much of an opportunity to work on this book. I came up with the idea, I think it was 9 months ago, if I remember correctly. It was in between drafts 1 and 2. Wait a minute. That might have been a year ago. Okay, now I have to check because I gotta check this. Hold on. It was a year ago. Oh my gosh. I can't believe I've had this book idea for a year and I've been kind of slowly working on it. Okay, so I've been working on this book for a year, but very, very little. I only work on it in between my drafts of Project Lily. So I've only had like 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there. What I've done so far is basically build a really rough outline for the story. And that's about as far as I've gotten. It's pretty much just a page, kind of a chapter by chapter outline of random things that happen throughout it. Not much character development, not much in terms of plot other than these are the things I think need to happen. And there does need to be a lot of work. Since I'm taking a pretty extended break on Project Lily, I'm aiming for like 2 months. I want to fully brainstorm and plot out this novel and have it ready to write by the time I write Project Lily. So basically within 2 months, I want all the prep work for this book done. I have no idea if this is possible or not. My prep work for Project Lily took 6 months. I've said many times that I think I took way too long to do the prep work on it. I also did not approach the prep work in a very good way. That was my first time ever trying to plan a book, and I honestly did it very poorly. I'm going to approach this book so much more differently than I approached Project Lily because I've learned a ton in the 2 years that I've been writing that book. Since it's time to lock in on book 2, I am going to focus my entire weekend on world building. I made a list of everything I want to accomplish this weekend. I'm going to list it off for you really fast and then just explain what I'm going to do tonight. So I have to do the names, so the names of the people, names of places, names of magic or history or random things in the world. I'm going to make a map. So I'm going to map out what does the geography look like? What does the terrain look like? Where are the cities? Where are the oceans or the mountains or whatever is in there? Just make sure the map has all the contents I need. And I'm just going to draw it on a piece of paper. I'm not going to go real fancy on this. I do need to figure out the magic. I think this will be the hardest thing for me to do and the thing that I will end up spending the most time on because this magic system, I haven't even fully planned it out. It's there's a few, I don't want to say plot holes, but maybe weaknesses that I haven't figured out yet. And I want to make sure I get all that buttoned up so that way when I start writing the book, I don't have any questions lingering or I don't see any plot holes. I need to work on the history, basically what has happened in that world, how are all the kingdoms or countries related and do they get along, and what, just any random events, any history that needs to be known to the reader or the characters, I need to make that up. I also need to focus on religion. This book is not going to be very heavily religious focused, but I want to make sure I have at least the details that kind of would work their way into someone's normal life. And then economics. This also might be one of the more difficult ones for me for this book. I plan to have some type of class system for now. That's my plan. And so I need to work out what do the classes look like? How do the people look like in those classes? What do they do? How did they wind up there? And then how does power and money flow through the world? This one was not a huge focus in Project Lily, so it'll be interesting to kind of dive into these kinds of details in a new book. And that's it. It's actually quite a long list, but it's a holiday weekend here, and that means I have tonight, it's Friday, and then I have 3 days to work on this. So I really think if I lock in and work really hard on building this world, I could probably do all the world building this weekend. And I don't think it will be completely finished. I don't think world building is ever completely finished until you're finished with the novel, because you always find little details here and there, especially in the first few drafts. You always find details that you missed the first time around or something that doesn't make sense. So I'm just going to make my best effort to plan out as much as possible and then go with that into the first draft of this book. So briefly, I'm going to talk about the names and the maps because that is what I'm going to focus on tonight. I think I can do both of these tonight because they are fairly easy in the sense that they don't require a lot of analysis or thought. And I have a confession to make. I've actually already been working on the names. I have a notebook, and whenever I have some free time, I jot down some names. What I do is I make a short list. So I put down like 30 to 40 possible names. And these are just names I find on a name website that sound interesting or sound like the character. And I write them all down, and then what I'll do is I'll just pick one. One lesson I learned in Project Lily was I spent way too much time trying to find the perfect name. And what ended up happening is as I was writing draft 1, the names either really sounded like they matched or they didn't. And then when I went into draft 2, I fixed some of the names for some characters. And so now I know, like, just pick a name and go with it. If it sticks, that's great. If it doesn't, I will know and recognize that, and I can change it later. So I already have the short lists for 3 main characters, and I just need to pick a name for each of those characters. And then I'm going to pick names for side characters. I have a handful of side characters planned for this book. I don't really know their character yet. I just know that I need a character in here to fulfill this kind of role, but I don't really know their personality yet. So their names could definitely change in the future, but I want to have a placeholder there. Another thing I learned in Project Lily was to have names for everything before you start writing. I didn't do this, and so many times I would get to a person or a kingdom in Project Lily and I would stop mid-sentence because I was supposed to put a name and I didn't have one. It interrupted my flow. It really took me out of the writing process and took me out of the story. So that was a huge lesson learned, and that's why I'm doing all the names now. So that way when I move into plotting, I will have all the names. When I move into writing, I will have all the names, and it's just one less thing I have to worry about as I go into writing. My goal is by the end of the night to have all the names decided, and then I'll also make a map tonight. I have a general idea of what I want the world to look like physically. I have the climates pretty much worked out, but I don't really have the geography or where cities are or what kind of bodies of water or terrain. I don't know any of that, so I'm going to play around with that tonight as well. I've never really made a map, so I might end up using several sheets of paper to figure this out, but hey, it's the process, right? I'm looking forward to getting into this world building tonight. World building is probably one of the most fun things to do because that's where the creative muscles really flex, and you get to come up with some crazy things and see what sticks. Tonight won't be so crazy because it's just names and a map, but it's a good place to start, and I'm so looking forward to my fun evening and weekend of world building. I started out the evening with a mocktail. I thought it would be a nice treat for myself to start my world building, but I decided to add some Aperol to it, so then it became a cocktail, a very mild cocktail. I jumped right into the names, going through every name I had put on my short list. I highlighted the ones, kind of like the top 5 that I wanted to choose from, and I made my choices. The next step was naming a bunch of side characters. I kind of cheated a little bit. I took the names of the main characters that I did not like, and the ones I knew I would never use, took a few of those and moved them over to side character naming lists. and I ended up choosing a few names from those. But when I moved on to naming the kingdoms / countries and cities, that became a lot more difficult. I haven't done that in such a long time that I forgot how hard it was to come up with things. I spent a little bit surfing around on Google Maps. I like to look at different areas of the world to see what kinds of names there are, and I write down city names that give me some inspiration and see what I can do with those. So I spent some time doing that until I could come up with some what I will call temporary country names and city names. And my last activity for the day was map making. This was pretty fun. I didn't really make a map like this for Project Lily, so it was nice to have my hand at it. Was my map a work of art? Absolutely not. It was more like a blob on a page, but it really helped me to visually see everything laid out. I made a few changes here and there and redrew my map a few times to get to something that I think really worked for my novel. Step 1 of world building is done. So the naming is done and the map is done. My names, I'll be honest, I'm not super thrilled with the geography names like the kingdoms and the cities and country names and things like that. Not super thrilled. But I had like an inkling of where I wanted to go, but nothing was truly coming to me tonight. But since I learned my lesson before, I just picked something and I reserve the right to change it in the future. The character names, though, on the other hand, I'm really excited about. I really like all the main character names I picked out and the side character ones as well. It turns out when I don't like a name for a character that I have on the list, I really don't like it, and I cannot see my character being named that at all. And so it was really easy to find those names and move them over to another list. I'm really glad I did a bunch of the prep work and going through and finding names, because I'll be honest, that whole process of just making the short list of like 20 to 30 names took hours of work. And for me, it's worth it because I like seeing all the variety of names and it gives me ideas. And it's kind of hard to explain, but I have personalities kind of assigned to my characters. Not like, it's not super clear at the moment, but I have an idea of who they are and what they want and what their personalities are like. And for some reason, I just get sounds in my head. Like the best way I can describe it is, I think this character's name should end in a N, or I think this character's name should have an S sound in it. And I don't know where this comes from or what possibly makes my brain work this way, but I kind of look at their personality and who they are and visually what I see them as. And I just kind of have sounds like, I think this is a name that sounds like whatever sound. And then I go through names that, and basically what my short list is mostly names that have those sounds in it. It's how my brain works. I have no clue how or why, but that's how I do names. As far as my map goes, it's a map. I like where I've put cities. I definitely moved city locations around. I moved borders around. It probably will change, but at least I have a starting point. And I think for the map, a starting point is a really good place. One thing that happened to me while I was working on Project Lily was I didn't have a good idea of where cities were. And so when people started traveling, I didn't know if they were going north or south or east or west. This again made me slow down and kind of took me out of focus because I had to solve a problem in that moment. This is another thing I definitely wanted to fix before I started writing. So the map is important to me. Now I have an idea of if the characters are going from one city to another, this is the direction they're going in. But it also helped me think about just seeing a whole continent, if you will, laid out, seeing in terms of the terrain and the weather, if it made sense where things were. I know it's a fantasy world, so it doesn't necessarily have to make sense, but I like it to make sense just because it is easier to write that way. But it also helped because not only was I putting in like mountains and desert, but I also started thinking about, well, is there a river somewhere? Is there a lake somewhere? I put a few in there just for fun. But then I also started thinking about maybe I should think about if I'm going to have those bodies of water in my novel or play a part in the book somewhere. One might in a certain place, but the problem is I haven't really mapped out the plot in terms of where everyone is going and where things are happening and what the setting is. That hasn't really been worked out yet. And so until that's worked out, I can't really truly make a complete map. But I think what I have is enough for me to get started writing, and I can fine tune that as I go along. I do think what I have is good enough tonight, and I'm happy with it. And I've done probably the most I can do for that right now. I was really productive tonight and I got a lot done, but it took a lot of time, and it was a lot more time than I thought it was going to take. And I think it's just because I haven't done world building like this in such a long time that I forgot how time consuming it is and how long it takes to come up with stuff. And sometimes my brain just doesn't want to figure something out today. And so maybe it'll figure it out tomorrow. Even though world building is fun, it can be very, very tedious because you do have to figure out a lot of details. And it's making me a little bit nervous for tomorrow, because tomorrow I'm going to focus on the magic system. And this is going to need the most help out of all of them. The magic, to me, I've kind of assigned the magic, if you will, to certain people and in general how it works, but I haven't really made up the rules. And I think the rules is where I'm going to struggle. It's definitely going to be an interesting time tomorrow, but I am looking forward to it. I'm excited to brainstorm a magic system, but at the same time, I'm nervous that it may take a lot more time than I think it will. This morning, I took the opportunity to go through a bunch of my notes that I've had over the various brainstorming sessions that have occurred over the last year. And unfortunately, I have done a very bad job of keeping all my notes in one place. I have 2 notebooks and random scraps of paper and also ideas floating in my head. And I had to sort through all that this morning and see what I actually had in terms of the magic system. And also, unfortunately, I didn't really have that much. I had, in all my previous brainstorming sessions, I think I had like 2 pages of notes on the magic system. My thoughts weren't very extensive. I did a little bit of brainstorming recently on the magic system, like a little exercise for like 30 minutes. That was probably a few weeks ago. I did it in secret. Sorry, I didn't tell you. Again, it wasn't very much, and I was focusing on one very particular aspect of the magic system, so I wasn't looking at it as a whole. I was focused on one problem, and so I looked at that note as well. But really, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of the magic system. I'm a little bit intimidated right now, and I've only given myself 1 day to work on the magic system, and I fear that it might take a few days, because as I was going through these notes, questions started popping up in my head like, oh, how does that work? Or I need to figure out the rule for this. There's a lot I need to think through and a lot of things that I need to try and troubleshoot, and I'm not sure a day is enough. What I'm going to try and do for the rest of the day is really build out the magic system, look at all the different aspects. Who in my world has what magic? How does it exist? How does it work? There's probably other questions in there that I can't think of off the top of my head. And I'm going to move all my notes into Excel. I think this is going to be the easiest way for me to organize my thoughts. And I need to build like a big Excel document for this novel anyway. This is one thing I'm going to do really differently for this book. I need to put in, I always have a names document, and I had a names document for Project Lily. I'm going to do the same thing for this book. It really helped me to put down the names of everybody and who they are. What I think I will end up doing this time is making this really big spreadsheet just full of all of the information, not the plot or anything really relating to building the writing aspect of my story, but something that tracks all the details, so that way I can have it all in one place, and when I need to look up something or write a thought down, it's just all in one place. lately, as you could see, my notes have been scattered in different places. I have started working on 2 different books in the same notebook. I've done that. I also want all my thoughts on Excel so that way when I start writing and I bring my computer with me places, I don't need to drag along a notebook as well, or 2 notebooks and paper in this case. So I'll start building that sheet today with the magic system. I don't know how I'm going to format it yet. That may be a work in progress just because I don't quite know yet what information I'm putting in there and how to organize it. But I really want the magic system to be well thought out and complete. And I'm going to take the time to do this right. So that way, when I sit down to write, I don't have many questions in my head as to what to write. I will check in with you later today, maybe tonight, about everything I worked through, because right now I'm not really sure what I need to work through. My magic system is very sparse and I need to start building it out. And I can't really tell what I need to work out yet until I start doing it. Even though I'm nervous about how much work is going to go into building this magic system, I am excited because this is going to be a lot of fun and I can't wait to see all the cool ideas I come up with. I think my magic system might actually be complete. I did a lot of work on this today, a lot of brainstorming and just taking ideas and seeing what would happen when I ran with them. And I came up with some pretty good stuff. It's as complete as I think I can make it right now. Obviously, there's going to be some holes that I will uncover as things go along, and I can change things depending on how the story and the plot goes. But I'm going to kind of walk you through the types of things that I worked on. First was the types of magic. So what are the various possibilities in terms of everything that can happen on this planet? What powers are out there, or what can people do with this magic? So I made a list of every possible magic on my world, and most of them I think I will keep. There's a few that I have question marks by that I'm not sure if I want to include them or not. It's going to be another situation of me going a little bit further with the story before I make that decision, but I've jotted it down. I have it as a note and it's there so I won't forget it. The next one was magic history, which I spent the most amount of time on trying to figure out. And this is what happened. Like, how is there magic? Did it just exist? Like, how did people get it? And what is the history of that magic over time? I did think of some really cool stuff, and I'm really excited about what I came up with and exploring it further as I plot my story and write. But I spent a lot of time thinking about this, like the origination of the magic. And I think I've got a good story going for that so far. The next one was how magic works in society and life. So what age does magic typically appear, and what happens when the magic appears, and does everybody get the magic, or does some people get the magic, and how does the magic go from parent to child, or if that even happens, like how does that person get the magic? And then also I dove a little bit into how does the magic affect people's lives? Like, does it give them a certain job? Does it put them in a certain place in the land? What I did is I just kind of asked myself these questions and thought about how magic would play a role in someone's life. And I just jotted down notes about random things that came to me and the way I thought the world should be. And then the last thing I brainstormed in terms of magic was who has what magic. Out of all my characters that I have assigned to this novel so far, what magic does each character have? And how do they display it? And how powerful are they? And I just went through my list of my types of magic and thought which magic suited which character the best. This really wasn't necessarily about personality, but it was more about what magic should that character have with the plot that I have. Because I did make a rough plot a long time ago, and I have a general idea of the story and who does what in the story. Even though it's vague, I think the magic will stay pretty much the same as I plot out the story. Like, I don't think I'll change the magic around too much. I might switch people's magic here and there or change some backstory about it, but I don't think the magic is going to drastically change, and I don't think what I've assigned people is going to drastically change either. This did end up being a lot easier than I thought it was, and it was a lot of fun, and I'm really happy with what I've got. So I'm going to call my magic world building complete for today. And that means I have the rest of the evening to enjoy myself. I totally forgot to watch the newest episode of The Other Bennett Sister last night. So I will be doing that tonight. And then tomorrow, oh, my phone is way over there. I forgot what tomorrow's brainstorming is. I think it's religion and economics. Those are 2 on the list. I think I had 5. I will pick at least 1 to work on tomorrow, probably 2, just because it's going to rain a lot and I'm not going to go outside tomorrow. So I'll have plenty of time to world build more. I'm ready to get back into things today. And last night I said I thought I had 2 things left, but I really have 3. I just checked. And I have history, religion, and economics. And I want to add 2 more things to that list. That is a Pinterest board and music. What I'm going to focus on today is economics. And what I didn't really cover in economics before was the social aspect. So I'm going to call it economics/social, because not only do I want to dive into what are the classes like and how does money flow and who holds power, but I also want to focus on the social aspect. So I think with classes in particular, that can be both economic and social. And then I also want to look at how relationships work and how people coordinate throughout the world. So I think it's going to be me focusing on those 2 things today. And then I'm also going to focus on my Pinterest board and music. These 2 things are purely aesthetic, and they are for me as a writer. For the Pinterest board, what I do is I will search various what characters look like, what places look like. So I might search like female with brown hair, or I might search castle. And I will look at all the pictures that come up and I'll save the ones that I think relate to my novel into a board. And then I have this massive board full of potential pictures of people and places and things in my book. And what I end up doing, and I'll do this closer to when I start writing, I will not do it today or in the near future. I do make a mood board, and that is like the final vision of what I see this book as. And I usually save that to my desktop computer. So Project Lily, I've made a mood board 2 years ago, and that has been the background on my computer. So I see it every time I turn on my computer, every time I turn it off, every time I close documents. And I will do the same thing for book 2 when it's time. As far as the music goes, I need to start building a playlist that I will listen to as I work on this book. I did this for Project Lily. It truly helped me get in the zone and helped me imagine the possibilities for my world. And so I do want to do this again for book 2. I did start a playlist many months ago when I was working on book 2 for like a brainstorming or plotting vlog. But it's very small. It's only like a half hour of songs, and that gets old really fast when you're listening to it. It starts looping very quickly. So I do need to build that out. The vibe is going to be completely different than Project Lily, so I will need to like search for a lot of songs or investigate composers. And what I typically do is I let Spotify, now that I have like a small playlist, I let Spotify do the, I don't know what it is, like suggested music or whatever. And then as I listen to it, if I like a song, I'll add it to the playlist. And this isn't a playlist that is solid. I do tend to add and delete songs as time goes on, and I get a clearer vision of the mood of my story. But I do want at least 2 hours of music because a typical writing session for me is about 2 hours. If I get all of this stuff done today, I would like to move on to history. I've already started diving into the magical history and kind of the history of characters a little bit when I've been plotting. And so I've got a semblance of a history, and I just want to go through and just do the history of the kingdoms and things like that. I'm not going to dive too far into character history and other histories, just the political history, I guess you could call it. But that's a big if. I do have a lot to do today in terms of work. I threw in this Pinterest and playlist, and that's going to take a lot of work. I probably may not finish the Pinterest and the playlist. Well, I definitely won't. I will say these are always working. I go through and add stuff to Project Lily once in a while for both the music and the Pinterest. And it always helps just to see new images to get inspiration. So I'll just do my best to build those out as much as I can today and then probably call it good. But it is a lot of work, and I'm added a bunch of stuff to my plate today. So hopefully I can at least get the 3 things done that I want. I've got my cookies here. I decided to make cookies because I finished my world building. This was quite a shock today. I didn't think I would make this much progress, especially because I had 5 things I needed to do to finish my world building. So let me walk you through everything I did today. So today I finished the economics, the history, and the religion. And I also made a Pinterest board and worked on my playlist. What I did with the economics was I talked about the class system that I'm thinking of implementing. It's still a little fuzzy because I'm not sure if what I have works. It may be something I need to dwell on a little bit, but I put what I believe it should be there. I also talked about what kinds of jobs people have based on the class system or based on their magic. And I just wrote some thoughts there. And I also delineated the differences between the economic state of each kingdom. Is one kingdom richer than the other? Does one have more resources than the other? Are the citizens happier in one over the other? So I just wrote down all my thoughts and captured them. So I think I have a pretty good handle on what the economics are in every kingdom. With the history, I just broke down the history for each kingdom, how it came to be, who did what, and how they interact with each other and why they interact with each other that way. I don't really know if I will be including all this information in the novel, but it's good backstory to have, because you never know when stuff like that needs to pop up or when a character might need to say something or do something because of something that happened in the past. And I just remembered something I forgot to put in here. Let me stick it in. I actually thought of this last night. So this is a event, think about a war or some kind of crazy global thing that happens. And that's another historical thing that's happening in my book. So I'm recording that and then explaining kind of everything that happened with that. And then I finished off with religion. This really didn't take me that long because this book is not going to be very religion focused. I just wanted to make sure I knew what kind of religion it was. Like, is it polytheistic? Is it atheistic? Is it monotheistic? And then I just kind of worked through, like, what do people generally do in terms of religion? Like, do they go to a temple? Do they pray? Do they mention their God when they talk? I don't really have many lines on this one, and it didn't take very long, which is also why I was able to finish it so much. My playlist, I was able to add a few extra songs to. It's up to an hour and 45 minutes, which I apparently had a lot more songs on there than I thought, but I think I'm going to delete some of them because as I was listening to the playlist, some of the songs didn't really resonate with me anymore. So right now it's at about an hour and 45 minutes. It'll probably go down to about an hour 30. I still need to add more songs to it, but I'm confident that I'll be able to find songs over the course of the next few months before I start writing. And Pinterest, I think we need to talk about Pinterest. That was very interesting. I was surprised. So when I did a Pinterest board for Project Lily, that was like 2 years ago, and there were quite a few AI images, but I also managed to find some non-AI images, and every single image I saw was AI generated, and it was really surprising to me because I typed in the word castle, and I expected, real life castles to pop up, and they were all AI generated. And I even started typing in things like Scotland Castle and Germany Castle, and I was still getting AI images. And I was just like, I don't understand what is happening. So I did, unfortunately, make my Pinterest board with the majority of AI images just because I could not figure out how to not get them. I even tried to search like castle not AI, didn't work. So if anyone knows how I can not get AI on Pinterest, please let me know. But unfortunately, I do have AI images on my Pinterest. I didn't see a way around that. So please don't come for me with all those AI images you saw. And I tried my best. I really did. But I did build a pretty complete, I say complete, but I think all the main points I wanted to get in my Pinterest board were there. I got all of the main characters. I got all of the locations and kind of like the terrain. So I think, at least as far as inspiration goes, that's enough to give me kind of a solid idea in my head of what my world looks like. So when I start writing, I can kind of be descriptive or refer to those images to kind of flourish my writing, if you want to say that. This whole exercise was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed creating and coming up with things. It has been a very long time since my brain has been able to be creative in such a way. I have spent like the last year and a half just writing, and my creativity just comes out in developing scenes, and I haven't really been developing like magic and trying to come up with a new world and new things that happen and creating everything from scratch. This is definitely a great break, and the type of break I needed after finishing the 4th draft of Project Lily. This is totally different. It's changing up my whole writing routine. It's something new and exciting to work on. And even as I was working on the world building this weekend, I just found myself getting more and more excited about everything that could happen with this book and all the possibilities. And it just has made me really anxious to get started on book 2.